Welcome to the special episode of SUMICAST, where we are celebrating AAPI Heritage Month. I'm Jocelyn Jayasooria Turner, Senior Marketing Communications Specialist from our Corporate Communications team here at SCOA. I recently became an American citizen, and I'm originally from Malaysia. As someone navigating life with one foot in my Asian roots and another in this Western world, I am honored to be hosting this conversation. Today, I'm joined with three incredible colleagues here at SCOA, and the first person is Katherine Nguyen Todarello, Internal Audit Senior Manager, Shawn Sabu, originally from Ascend SC, a talent exchange for us, and now is our Manager of ITPP, which is our IT Planning and Promotion team, and then also Sarah Yuen, Director of Treasury. And so today they all share incredible stories of growing up here in America while also being rooted in your Asian heritage. Let's start where it all began. Each of you have different stories of migration and coming here to America. Sarah, why don't we start with you? What's your story? How was the family migration? Where did they originally come from, etc.?
So my mom came over from Hong Kong with her parents and her siblings in the 1970s, early 1970s. She came as a teenager, and they settled down in Chinatown because they had extended family there. They would sponsor them. My dad came on his own later on, about like a year after that, and so they met here. My dad was the oldest of 7 siblings, and his father had passed when he was very young, so he had to go out and work and work a lot of odd jobs, and he came to the States. So they met here. I was born in Queens. I grew up on Staten Island, but spent a lot of weekends in Chinatown. So that was my way of, being immersed in the culture and the language and being with family. So that's how we got to be here. And my dad worked as a restaurant worker, and then eventually made it his way successful and owned his own restaurant on Staten Island.
Amazing. Yes. Thank you for sharing that. Yes. And Shawn, you are similar to me. You weren't born here, but you migrated here with your family. Tell us a little bit of your family migration story and what that was like.
Yeah, absolutely. So my parents were initially born and raised in India, this state called Kerala. And, growing up in Kerala, the end goal is to kind of get out of there just to maximize your opportunities. So my dad was in Dubai, my mom was in Mumbai, and they got married. So I was born in Mumbai, India. And when I was a couple months old, we actually moved to Liverpool in the United Kingdom. Right. So I spent the first 8 years of my life there. And then in 2008, we moved to Houston, Texas. So Houston, Texas is now home. That's where I was, just spent most of the years of my life. And yeah.
Okay. And so what was growing up in the UK like versus growing up in America? Was the education system very different for you to adjust to and navigate?
I think the hardest thing was spelling color in 2 different ways. But
you still don't know that one, I think.
Aside from that, it was just mostly like, coming here with a different accent. And going from Liverpool to Houston is 2 completely different environments and societies.
Sure.
So, I think if I moved to New York, people would have appreciated my accent.
Okay.
But in Houston, I got bullied for it.
I see.
So I ended up losing my British accent, which I deeply regret.
Right.
But as far as the school system, I'm kind of grateful for it because in the UK, we start 2 years earlier. So because of that, I was able to graduate high school at 16 in the US. So kind of gives you a head start in life.
All right. I'm going to share a little bit of Katherine's story. Now, I know all stories are not one that are filled with, I guess, the American dream, the hope, the joy. Some of it does come from a place of difficult chapters, right? Like war and displacement and starting over from nothing. So, Katherine, could you share a bit of your family's journey from Vietnam and, how it shaped your upbringing and your outlook to life here in America?
Sure. My parents left the day of the fall of Saigon. So exactly 50 years ago, on April 30th, and they had to leave, otherwise they would be killed. So my mom's father was a high-ranking officer in the South Vietnamese Army, and
he would be jailed. My uncles would also, bad things would happen to them. So they had to leave. They were literally boat people, and they were sponsored by a church in upstate New York. So that's how I ended up there. My dad, he came here literally by himself. So my other grandfather worked for the U.S. Embassy in South Vietnam. And my grandfather shoved him onto a helicopter and said that he had to go. Otherwise, my dad would probably be in jail too. So by a literal miracle, my father found his uncles in Pennsylvania. So that's where my parents met. They were 20 years old. They're still kids.
Amazing.
And they met in college in Pennsylvania. And they worked their butts off to speak English without an accent. So I didn't know how much of a benefit that was for me growing up, because in upstate New York, you get picked on for any differences you have in a small town. So my parents worked really hard. They bought their house. My dad was a computer programmer, and my mom was an accountant. So that was my backstory.
Oh, that's so powerful that your parents were able to meet each other and survive that. How do you reconcile the trauma that your family's been through as you hope for a better future and you live your life here in America? How do you sort of balance that understanding of the nuance of history and the complication of history? And the baggage it brings, right? But also looking for a better day, the American dream and the hope of a future here.
Yeah. So, I can't imagine what my parents went through, and they kept it all inside. They were really strong. I didn't know their stories until I was practically an adult. And they worked really hard to preserve, being Vietnamese. Yeah, we couldn't get the same ingredients for things, so they had to make do with what they had for recipes. As a kid, you don't appreciate it as much. Like, growing up, I wasn't American enough.
Right.
And you'd be the kid that brought in like weird lunches to school or something like that. But now, I value that so much. All the history and the culture, and I regret, not being able to speak and read Vietnamese as well as I used to as a kid. And so it's kind of sad to lose that, but also, especially being in New York, meeting so many other people of different cultures and like having, learning their stories too. So it makes you appreciate your family's history and your background a lot.
Amazing. What about the both of you as well? I know all of us are one foot in our Asian culture, one foot in this American Western culture, and similar to what Katherine said, I can relate to not being Asian enough sometimes and not being American enough sometimes, and you're neither nor or. How do you two what's your experience of that, and how do you balance being in both cultures? Is it a little like an identity crisis for you, or what is it like for both of you? You can go first.
Yeah, so for me, I would say that it's really depends on the person, right? So there's certain occasions where I would be talking to like traditional Indian people, and they would consider me as whitewashed, right? Just I guess like the way I talk and the way I carry myself. So it's almost as if like you kind of have to prove yourself to them and kind of show them like I am still one of you at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we also have to do that with everyone else that's not Indian, right?
Sure.
So at the end of the day, it's kind of complicated because you're over here trying to fight two battles at the same time. But I think over the years, you just aspire to find that perfect balance.
Okay. And you, Sarah?
Yeah, I think it's harder when you're a child. Yeah, because you're just trying to grow up.
Yeah.
Having strict Asian parents,
Sure.
you couldn't do a lot of things. You couldn't wear makeup. You couldn't date. You couldn't have sleepovers. You couldn't do all the things, and then you would just be felt more ostracized because you couldn't do all the social things. But you find your way. You find your voice. You find as you grow older, you find your community, whether it's in high school or in college, because you expanded your world expands a bit more. It's not just stand on the weekdays at school where not many Asians, and then weekends is Chinatown, right? It eventually kind of you grow into your own and become more confident and yourself.
Become your own identity,
Yeah.
right? All of you sort of alluded to the notion of family and expectations, strict parents, hardworking parents, parents that fought for you to have a future here. What is that like in going into talking about careers? And what were the expectations that your parents had for you growing up here? Maybe Catherine, you might want to share first.
Everything is all about guilt.
Okay.
Is that true? I
Right.
mean, it's innate, it's unspoken.
Sure.
For me, I think there was a degree of disappointment because I was supposed to be a biochemical engineer. That's what I got my scholarship for. And I ended up with a journalism degree. And I mean, to make my mom happy, I got my MBA.
Okay, sure.
So, but yeah, you try to, honor them and make them proud. I think that's the biggest thing, because especially everything that they went through, this little thing that you could do to be successful and then give them comfort in their old age and like pay for things and take them on trips just as a way of saying thank you and appreciation.
Yeah. And Shawn, do you feel the same?
Yeah, absolutely. Because all our parents went through a very difficult path to get us here, to give us this opportunity. So at the end of the day, like, my biggest goal growing up was just to make them proud.
Right.
And both of them are in the medical field, so ideally they wanted me to follow in their footsteps. But I found out early on in life that just wasn't my calling. So the next best thing for Indian parents is doing anything computer related. So that's just kind of the path I chose. I did computer science and ended up here. So I think I did make them proud for the most part. And the other thing is, like, our community is so exclusive to where they have a habit of just wanting to live through their kids, and they want to be able to kind of brag, right, to the other parents and stuff. So it's very important that I do something that's worth bragging.
Sure.
Right.
Sure. Right. Makes them proud. All right, Sarah.
I don't think my parents expect me to be in specific profession, just something that was going to make them proud or, earn a salary, be able to earn a living. My dad, he got ill and he was still in the restaurant business. He was a restaurant owner and he was looking to retire. And so he did, even though he was still ill. And during that time, I said to him, do you want me to continue this restaurant? Wasn't sure if this was something that he wanted to do as his legacy or something. And he said, no, this is not the legacy that I wanted for you and your brothers. It's such a hard profession and hard industry, but he did it because that's what he learned and that's all he knew with the education that he had. And he was very successful at it. So he's like, no, just continue working in finance, do your thing. Yeah, so basically just honoring by working hard and making the sacrifices and making a better life for the next generation for my kids.
Yeah. Amazing. You alluded to this notion of work-life balance. There was no work-life balance in our parents' generation. And now we're here in America where this is such a strong push, right? And there's so many Americanized corporate norms that we've had to adjust to. Do you ever feel there's a tug of war between the corporate norms that America teaches you versus your heritage that your parents have taught you, where you have to adjust? For example, something as simple as like humility. We're all taught to be humble and to do our best, and whereas corporate America might say self-promotion is the way to be successful and go to the next level and be promoted, right? How do you navigate those things? Shawn, maybe you can take that.
I got you. Yeah, so I think the most important thing, how it affects me, is complacency. So just from like where my parents grew up and how they were raised, they were just never complacent on anything they did. They always gave everything their 100%.
Yeah.
And I feel like in the American culture, we're often taught to like take a break, right? Be easier on yourself. Don't work too hard. So it was kind of tough for me to kind of figure out what's right, what's wrong, right? Because if I follow too much into what I'm taught from society, that I might disappoint my parents because I'm not putting enough effort. But I think over the years, you just kind of learn and know how to navigate through everything and just kind of find the balance. Yeah.
Amazing. And all of us working for a Japanese company here at Sumitomo Corporation of Americas, that adds another layer of culture. Working for a Japanese company in America. Sarah, you've got the longest tenure here.
Yeah.
Share a little bit about some of the, I guess, cultural differences that you see, or even the cultural similarities that you relate to, and what you've sort of been able to take on that has helped you navigate the world of the Japanese culture, the American culture, your own heritage, right?
Yeah.
And yeah.
So it was the first music company that I've worked at,
Okay.
and maybe the last. I've
Yeah.
worked here for a long time.
Yes.
But yeah, you mentioned navigating that, and I guess navigating being Asian American, you were used to bridging the gaps.
Yep.
You understood what high context communication is. Because you do it with your parents, and you do it in your community, and it's very much so sometimes at the company, and especially when you're working with expats. I think having that background and being used to it, you kind of know it's much easier to navigate between low context and high context communication. And just when you were talking about complacency, I just thought of this quote that I learned maybe a few years ago. I'm probably not going to do it justice, but it's by Dwayne Johnson.
Okay. Right.
And it's like, be humble, be hungry, and be the hardest person in the room, or working person in the room, something like that. So I try to do that, but also making sure that you're visible, that you earn that seat at the table, and make sure you advocate for yourself, and network and find people to advocate for yourself as well.
Now let's dive into something that is a little bit complicated. It's called stereotypes. It can be hurtful, can be painful, can be sometimes humorous. But it has probably impacted and pushed definitely different invisible areas that we've been boxed into sometimes. I'd love to hear your thoughts on how stereotypes have shown up in your life, right? How you dealt with them, and what representation means to you in shaping this experience. So, firstly, has the model minority myth shown up in your life or career? Where, example, we have to be excellent, right? Reflection of our family, don't cause a scene. I think there's a lot of expectation on us, right? If you want to share, Katherine, maybe you can start.
Yeah. So for me, it was, I think a lot of my experiences as a kid kind of made me grow up faster. So my parents just wanted me to just excel in school. Like that would be my ticket out. And at school there would be competitions for like math and music, and I did as much as I could just to be busy at home, because like Sarah said, you're not allowed to go over to friends' houses, you can't have a boyfriend, all of that stuff. So let me occupy my time as a kid till I can leave. So yeah, that model minority myth was not a myth. That fit the stereotype. Just to kind of keep your head down and do really well. And then just coming here to New York, especially for college, and like being here for the past 20 some years for corporate life, there is a balance. I like being here in New York because I'm more of a anonymous person, not a nobody, but like no one's gonna bother you because you look like everybody else. You are not special here, so everyone has their own story and their own background, and I think bringing that to your career, it's different. I think you have to just show your worth. But still, a whole part of me is like not be loud about it. So you're right. There is that balance of what you're used to and how to continue evolving and growing.
Shawn, what about you? Were there like I guess specific things that you feel like were harder expectations on you or that you had to live up to, whether in your career or in your life? And was there a difference between being here and being in the UK, or was it pretty similar?
I'd say it's similar. I think the biggest thing for me was just being the oldest son in the family is just kind of that everything I did represented my parents.
Right.
So that was kind of ingrained in me from a little child. So it added an extra set of pressure on anything I did, right? It's like if I get in trouble, my parents are gonna have to deal with it from the community. If I did something good, it's not gonna get the credit it deserves, but it's better than getting in trouble.
Yeah.
And on top of that, it's also that like I had a little brother, so it was very clear that everything I did kind of shaped him, right? I was kind of like a role model for him. So anytime he got in trouble, I'd kind of get blamed for that, right? So it was also important for me to kind of just make sure that I could be a model citizen, not just for like my parents, but also for my little brother.
And what are some stereotypes that you might have encountered that you had to challenge or unexpectedly fit into?
I think unexpectedly fit into is definitely just being a brown person working in IT.
Yeah.
But I think at the end of the day, like you kind of just have to embrace it. You know, especially in today's world, there's so many brown CEOs that are kind of just killing it in the technical world. So just kind of use that as inspiration and
So you now alluded to how representation matters and it changes the narrative, right? With CEO being Indian and different things like that. How does representation affect you, Sarah? In whether in leadership, entertainment, media, even in our careers, has representation mattered to you?
It has, especially being a woman that started in finance, right? So it's a male-dominated field, especially, you want to see people that are similar to you, that share similar struggles, that are in positions of decision-making.
Amazing. All right, moving on to something that's a little closer to our heart, but I think we've talked a lot about, which is family, love, and identity. All right, we'll start with you, Shawn. Have you had the aunties going, Nona, who are you gonna marry? When is it time? Do you need me to arrange your marriage? Have you had that kind of social pressure in how you approach love and marriage and finding a life partner? Has that been something that you've had to navigate from your Indian background, but being in America where it's totally not the same?
Yeah, anytime I go to a wedding, my parents get like 4 calls the next day. But aside from that, honestly, like I know ideally, like I was supposed to find someone from my civic community, but it didn't quite work out that way. So I have a girlfriend that's not Indian.
Right.
And with that came a whole lot of challenges. Luckily, my parents were very supportive about it, especially because she's also Catholic, right? That solved half the problems. But on top of that, it's just mostly like the challenges that she had to face, right? Just kind of being accepted by all my aunties and uncles. And even like, we've been dating for a long time, but even till this day, there's certain people that quite hasn't like accepted it yet.
Sure.
And I don't know if they ever will, but I mean, that's their problem, right?
Right.
But yeah.
Okay. Catherine, please share about how you navigate marriage. I understand you're married to an Italian man.
Yes.
How has that worked out with blending cultures? How do you embrace his culture, but also stand your own and still be Vietnamese in the house, plus American? How has that helped?
Oh, so to clarify, it's Long Island Italian.
Okay.
So I think that brings in
All right. Okay, another layer.
Another layer of things, I'm
sure. I'm Italian. Got it.
So that made it also difficult in certain ways too. So first of all, going back to you can't have a boyfriend when you're in school. As soon as you graduate, when are you getting married? Yes, you know? So, we weren't together for too long, but my mom literally sat him down, and she's tiny, you know,
Right.
but she's also terrifying.
Yeah.
So she sat him down and just point blank asked, you know, what are your plans? My parents, just being exposed to, you know, how we grew up, the people that we grew up with, they had no restrictions or no preferences. As long as he was a good man, he was educated, preferably Catholic too.
Yeah.
So that was my husband, you know, and he is very kind and very open to my family and my culture.
Sure.
I thought there would be some complications with his family because, you know, suburban Long Island life is very different. So we had a lot of like humorous things to grow with together. He said that, oh, I don't like fish sauce. And so afterwards, like, he didn't realize that anything I cooked, I would slip fish sauce and I'm like, "You eating it." And then I tried, you know, teaching him to learn some Vietnamese words.
Right.
It's a simple language, like the basic structure is simple, but some pronunciation is weird.
Yes.
So my last name with the proper accents is not easy for most people to say. And so he's like, it sounds like you're saying baseball, but you're saying no, you said baseball. I'm like, yes. That's what it sounds like. There's different accents.
Yeah. Yeah.
So love has been fun, and it's been very rewarding because like we have the same values.
Sure.
And you know, embracing each other's like cultures and identities and backgrounds too. So thankfully, luckily for me, I don't have complications or difficulties from our families about that. We went to Vietnam and there was some talk about stuff, and I felt like I wasn't Vietnamese enough.
Yeah.
But you know, that's extended family. So within, you know, our close group with our friends, our family, I think we've been lucky.
Yeah. It's very funny that you could hide fish sauce.
He's used to it now. That's great.
Sarah, what about you? I know you married someone from a very similar background. Were there any criteria or expectations when you were looking for love? And marrying someone with that same or similar background, has that made it easier in navigating culture and then passing it on to the future generation?
I think there was expectations when I was, you know, of age to make it sound so weird, of age. You know, when I was dating, you know, for college life, and it wasn't always the same culture for me. But it worked out that we met through friends, and for me, it wasn't that he had the same culture as me, that he was Chinese American, but just fell in love with the person himself. And his Brooklyn accent. Very good.
Okay, we've got Long Island, we got Brooklyn, Texas, or no?
No.
Okay.
But, I mean, it has, you know, being on the same language, he speaks the language, he actually speaks the language, Cantonese better than myself, so people can't talk about him.
Okay.
But like the food and knowing, you know, when you even calling relatives on the mother and dad's side, you know, if they're younger or older, there's like a different name for everyone, and you know, I remember as a kid trying to navigate who's who, like you know, your parents had announced who it was. But you know, it has having someone similar background has helped a great deal, especially when taking care of our parents, understanding the needs, and he's basically, you know, helping out all the time. So, but with our kids, I have 2 boys now, 9 and 6, and you know, in early age, they were being taken care of by the grandparents. So they knew the language to spoke Cantonese, but once they started going to school, they kind of lost it a bit, actually a lot. So I've been trying, and sometimes when I'm using Cantonese, my husband uses English. I'm like, well, you're counteracting myself. But I think the high context, low context comes back into play here, where our parents they show their love and their care through actions. It wasn't words. They weren't going to say, "Oh, I love you." No, I love you.
Same for you. Same for you.
It's really actions. They cook your favorite meal. They know you had a hard day.
Sure.
So, but with my kids, it's different. Like I love
Sure.
them, and I do tell them I'm proud of them. Like I know my parents are proud of me
Sure.
when they tell their relatives, right?
Right.
You kind of hear them like,
Yeah.
"Oh, okay,
Yeah.
they're proud of me." But yeah, because they're bragging, right? So, but with my kids, it's different generation.
So, what do you hope that your boys take out of your Chinese American culture? What's something that you really hope that they carry through from generation to generation?
I think number one thing is strong family values. I grew up with a big family of cousins and aunts and uncles around me, so I want them to do the same.
Yeah.
So we actually do see a lot of my aunts and uncles, my cousins often, and so it's good. They get excited to see them. They think about them, and so I think because it helps you navigate through life. Whether I'm here or my husband, they'll still have family to help support them.
All right, Shawn, you mentioned a little bit about being first child. I understand that you ladies are also first child.
Yep.
So is this first child syndrome thing a thing? Were the expectations pretty much of the highest level for each of you? What are some of the similarities or differences that maybe you've experienced? Catherine, you can start.
Sure. I'm the oldest of three.
Yeah.
So Sarah and I were talking. We're like second moms.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything that you do it reflects just as exactly what you said, Shawn. My siblings definitely had it easier than I did, but also going through certain experiences that weren't so great for me as a kid. I did not want my siblings to have to deal with that. Sure. So I was really protective. I was called like a stupid little when I was 6 years old. Like I refused to have my brother and sister be called that. So it's like I worked really hard at school. So it got to the point where teachers were like, "Oh, you have a Nguyen in your class? It's like trading cards. I'll trade you this kid. I'll take like that problem child if I can get Jackie or Peter in the class instead." So it was very hard, and I think I mentioned before, you grow up faster, not just being a different kid, but also being the oldest. So that has shaped a lot. And like even when I hang out with my sister, she is a successful, corporate person director at Chase. She's got 2 little kids, but she still acts like a little child around me, and I still have to take care of her. So there was a lot of expectation being the first kid.
And similar to you, Sarah, did you have that protective side?
Definitely, being the oldest and the eldest daughter, you're the third parent, the second mom. Like there's so many different things I can, and the bridge between my parents and my siblings, because I learned, I spoke Cantonese. I still speak Cantonese the best out of my brothers. Okay. And it's always like, oh, you need to keep an eye on them. You need to, he didn't text me back. Can you call him? Like, I'm not sure he's going to call me back if he's not calling you back. But you also had to grow up really fast. Reading insurance papers or any kind of mail that came in, because you can read English, right? Being the oldest, but I don't know what I'm reading. I don't understand. I still don't know certain things. So it's taking on a lot of burden, but and a lot of challenges. But I think it makes you more resilient. And so when you face things, that the outcome you're gonna come out better for it, or this shall pass, that kind of thing. So.
Being an oldest, was there anything that you overcame, similar to Catherine, who protected her younger siblings? Was there anything that you overcame that your siblings didn't have to go through?
Yeah, I got in enough trouble, so my brothers, he had a way easier upbringing. But aside from that, it's, being I wouldn't say first generation college student because my parents went to school in India, but being a first generation college student in the United States, was quite difficult for me just because I couldn't really rely on my parents as much. They weren't really there to like help me with college applications, dorming, just kind of helping me figure out what's needed and right. So since I had to kind of just figure all that out on my own, it was really dope that I was able to kind of help my brother with that since he had me, right? So I would say he had a lot easier of an experience than I did.
You paved the way. Was the experience of going to college, being the first one in your families in the United States, the same for both of you?
Yeah, it was the same. I was the first that went to college, and I was fortunate that I had cousins that were older than me that I asked them for help for certain things that I couldn't get through. So, but again, it made it easier for my brothers because you went through the process, you understood what needed to get done.
Yeah, to be honest, for me, college and New York City in college is a very different experience. Growing up, you're kind of sheltered because your parents are so strict, and then all of a sudden, every day is a sleepover. You're hanging out with friends, and that kind of explains why I did not get the biochemistry degree.
Okay.
So
Okay. I see.
But yeah, so it really just like shaped everything. And then my sister did have it easier. My brother did have it easier going to college. They were more, I guess, well balanced.
Yeah. Okay, so let's celebrate something that brings us all together. Food. I love food. And each of us have such rich cultures and heritage with such great food. I've tasted food from all your cultures, and I love it. What's one dish, if you could eat it every day? It gives you comfort, gives you joy. If you could eat it every day, what's one dish from your heritage that you would eat?
So it's not really a dish, but my favorite drink
Okay.
is a mango lassi.
Ah,
I think I
okay.
could genuinely drink that every day and it'll put a smile on my face.
Wow. Do you make your own?
I don't, but my mom
Okay.
could. I mean,
Okay.
it's not complicated.
Yeah.
I honestly just never really tried.
Okay. Cool.
There's like special mangoes you have to import.
That
it,
and
right?
even just like the cream and mixtures like
Yogurt.
that goes
Okay.
into it. You have to get it from like certain Indian shops to like make it authentic.
What about you, Catherine?
For me, it's bangkon.
Okay.
It's the steamed rice rolls with the ground pork and the mushroom filling.
Right.
So I don't have the patience to make it.
Right.
That's a big reason. But that was a specialty dish that when my grandmother had time, she would make it. And so I think that's like, it reminds me of growing up, being home with my family. And it's something that like I don't make, like pho. Like I have that, and I can do that in a weekend myself.
Yeah.
But so I want something more special,
Yeah. Sarah, what about you?
Noodle soup.
Yeah. Any bowl.
Yeah, any bowl, anything with noodles and soup in it. Going Cantonese, very big on seafood, so wonton noodles is like a very big thing, especially coming from Hong Kong. Beef balls, beef noodle soup. I guess anything, because you can put anything you want in a bowl of noodles. And that was like my dad's favorite thing to eat. So I have a lot of memories growing up eating that. Like on the weekends, my mom didn't make pancakes or eggs or whatever. She would make noodles. Yeah. And so I would like wait to eat in the morning, wait until they got up because they went to bed late since the restaurant owner, and just waited for those noodles. So that's my comfort food. Like even when I'm traveling, anywhere, after a few days, I'm like, oh, I really want to noodles. And it's so funny. My brothers are the same way when I talk to them.
Okay. So you came from a restaurant culture. Did you inherit some of the recipes, and are you a good cook?
I'm better at eating than cooking.
Aren't we all?
Yeah, exactly. My dad wasn't really like a chef owner, because again, it wasn't something that he was, passionate and grew up with, right? It was something that he did for survival and really, really good at. So he was more like a manager owner type of thing. So yeah, but I always think about service. Right. He was very big on service because when you think about it, and it kind of goes into career,
Yeah.
anybody can do what you can do, right? There's always going to be something, but how are you going to do it better?
Mm-hmm.
And what do you bring to the table? And so when I go to eat at restaurants, like, a lot of restaurants can make really good food,
Yeah.
but the service will oftentimes differentiate.
Sure.
So I think about that, and I think about my dad.
Okay. That's a good segue to what are our favorite restaurants. So you said big on service, good food, tastes good, authentic, good service. Do you have one here in Houston? Do you have one here in New York? What's one favorite restaurant that you can recommend to our audience listening?
Yeah, of course. So there's actually this new restaurant that just opened up in Midtown. It's actually really close to here. It's called Chatti, like Chatti.
Yeah.
So it's the executive chef. He actually came from India.
Yeah.
So he had like a sister restaurant that was really famous in Bangalore. So he just came here and opened it up. And it's kind of like the model is like there's this thing in Kerala called like toti shops.
Okay.
That's where like people just kind of go and like it's like super casual. They drink coconut rum, and there's just like little snacks, right? It's like the Kerala version of tapas.
Sure.
So that's kind of the concept behind this restaurant. So it's like super authentic, but kind of in like kind of bringing that, but in like an upscale way.
Okay.
So definitely recommend y'all.
It's not sponsored, by the way, but if you do want to sponsor us, why not? What about you, Catherine?
Oh, it's tough for me to decide. I
Yeah.
think there's like an influx of really good Vietnamese restaurants in the city lately. So I've made an effort to try them all.
Okay. You have a list then.
Yeah, a list.
We can add this as a distribution.
So one that just recently opened by Union Square is called Bang Am. They have an offshoot all the way uptown, which is not convenient for me to get to. And so this location has been packed every day that they're open. They make the dishes, this place, and also Mum in Chinatown. They make dishes that are like not traditionally seen in most of the other Vietnamese restaurants here. So these are places I've taken my parents to, and like my dad is like, I haven't had this dish in like 20 years. So it means a lot to him because it's different, but it gives him a taste of home too.
Amazing. And you, Sarah?
That means it must be really good because Asian parents are really hard to impress with food. They're always like, "Oh, this is so great," and they're like, "Oh yeah, it's good."
Cool. Sarah, your favorite restaurant?
Well, Hong Kong too.
Is it your family?
No, it's not. But we still have a restaurant on Staten Island. No, we rent it out.
Plug it. This is a sponsored ad.
Yeah, it's called Jack Mao on Highland Boulevard. So Hong Kong style diners, right? Ta Tan Tang. There's a place in China. Well, there's a few now that have opened up in Chinatown, but Gong Sik Tong is probably the popular one right now. It's pretty long wait. But it's on Division Street, I think.
All right. Okay, for me, it is my favorite dish would be nasi lemak, which is our national dish, and it's very, very hard to find an authentic Malaysian restaurant that can perfect the sambal, which is the like red sauce, that's the spicy sauce that is done well. And so for me, the best Malaysian restaurant I've had so far is probably Rasa. So yeah. All right. Next thing would be, what makes you proud to be Asian American, whether it's Indian American, Vietnamese American, Chinese American? What makes you proud of being part of this culmination of two worlds?
You're more adaptable to things. You bring different experiences to the table that are special. You can relate to so many more people. I feel like my generation with a certain story, I've met so many other Vietnamese American friends that their parents, their uncles, their grandparents, we have that shared background, and you can relate to them, and everyone's interests, their education, it's so different, but you find your community in special ways, not just with other Vietnamese people, but like we're talking here, and like, we can just relate.
Yeah, amazing. Shawn?
I think it's important to like recognize the blood, sweat, and tears that are the earlier generation sacrificed to give us this opportunity.
Yeah.
So I think, it kind of makes me want to like do my part to make it easier for the future generations to kind of thrive, regardless if that's in America, Europe, Australia, wherever.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the legacy of, having a hard work ethic, family values, I think, just being a child of immigrants, right, regardless of the race or the culture or religion, you have a shared experience, whether, and everyone's journey is a little different and a little unique, but there's this overarching experience that you can kind of share as different stories, but they kind of have the same themes. And I think it allows you to be able to relate and kind of connect with people. I think human connection is what we're lacking sometimes in this world.
Okay. That's very, very insightful, all of you. Thank you so much for sharing that. Let's end on, if you could advise someone that's newly migrated, similar to myself, or someone that's starting out in their careers, what would your advice be as an AAPI professional for them to help navigate the two worlds, the two cultures, being in America?
For me, there's no right or wrong background anymore.
Yep.
For the experience for a certain job. So whatever you've learned, that shapes who you are, and you can apply it. Like, especially for me, for internal audit, most people have the external audit background and they just jump into that. But honestly, going to journalism school, that has helped me a lot to be able to speak with people, to interview them, to do research, to write. That's a huge thing for audits.
Yeah.
So that plus the MBA, I think that's an interesting mesh of things. So you can't count people out for being different.
Shawn?
For me, I would say that it's important to kind of like embrace and be proud of your background. I think it's important to kind of just continue to like share your culture, your history. That way it doesn't die down. I think there's so much to learn from every culture and every country, right? So I would just advise to continue doing that, spreading the knowledge.
I think along those lines, not be afraid to speak up, share your perspective, make your voice heard. If you can't complain if you don't voice your perspective and share it and have it valued, and advocate. I know I mentioned this multiple times, but advocate for yourself, because there might not be somebody else to know to advocate for you. If you can't even advocate for yourself, how you can't expect someone else to do the same. And then I guess just going back to Dwayne Johnson, be humble, be hungry, and be the hardest working person around. If that's the exact quote or something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here and sharing from your heart. It's been a true joy to hear all your stories and how you carry culture in every part of your life. Let's continue to learn from each other and celebrate each other's culture.